October of 2020, 51 former intel officials signed a letter saying the Hunter Biden story had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Baloney. It was true. I want to know what those 51 people based that on when they sent that, because that letter became the basis for big tech and social media platforms to suppress that story, which we know had an impact on the 2020 presidential race.
Ohio Republican Jim Jordan is joining us tonight for his first Centerpoint appearance. Congressman Jim Jordan, good to see you. Thank you for joining us for the first time on Centerpoint.
Yeah, good to be with you.
Now that the elections are largely done, I say that with a little grain of salt because we know they're still not done, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But we move on to another election, the House leadership elections, and there is now a challenge, apparently, to Kevin McCarthy. Andy Biggs of the Freedom Caucus, an organization, the conservative part of Congress, which you helped to found, is now allegedly going to challenge Leader McCarthy. Your thoughts about that?
Well, Andy's a great guy and a good friend, and also former chairman of the Freedom Caucus. But I've been clear, the guy that gets you to the Super Bowl, and it looks like we're going to win and get the House and get the majority. The guy that gets you to the Super Bowl gets to coach the game, and so I've been very clear about that. But we'll see what happens when conference meets. But I think Kevin McCarthy is likely to be the speaker. But Andy Biggs is a great guy, and there's a little friendly competition happening.
Mm-hmm. And that will happen Tuesday. You expect to vote on Tuesday?
Yeah, that's the plan time. Look, I know there's some looking to make that a little later. I see no problem with pushing that back. Frankly, we don't know if we won yet. It sure looks like we're going to. Right. But I tell you what I'm focused on. I'm focused on, hopefully we're going to win. I think it looks like that's going to happen. What I'm focused on is hopefully leading the Judiciary Committee and doing the work that we need to do in that committee to protect your constitutional rights, your First Amendment liberties, your Second Amendment liberties, your due process rights, and frankly, the investigations that need to be done so the American people get the facts and get the truth about how political our Justice Department has become.
As you well know, I'll get to all that in a second, but as you well know, the red wave did not materialize. What went wrong for Republicans?
Well, I always look at the positive. Like I said, it looks like we're going to get the House. I think just about everyone thinks we're going to pick up these races that are still being counted. I think there's a couple things we have to look at going forward. One is just the operation of a campaign. The Democrats use this crazy ballot harvesting in certain states. I think we're going to have to do that too. I mean, the simple fact is, those are the rules. The new rules are such that we're going to have to get in there and function under them and make sure we turn out our vote, get our voters to the voting booth. I mean, even though we won the popular vote, we lost so many close races, and it seems like we lost them in these areas where there's a huge mail-in vote in states like Washington, Nevada, California. So we're going to have to adapt to those rules which have now been with us a couple cycles, but we're going to have to implement the same kind of thing on our side to make sure we can compete and actually win.
It does nothing to engender any kinds of confidence in our voting system in this country. And you say you're going to have to play by the Democrats' game, though. Is it a fair game?
Well, I mean, look, most states don't have it, but don't have this huge mail-in voting and the ballot harvesting that California has. But in those states that do, I think you got to operate under those rules and do all you can. It's like in any contest, any sporting contest, you may be doing fine under the old rules, but if they change the rules, you got to adapt and you got to deal with that. So I think that same thing has to apply here. The positive is, we won the popular vote. I think it was 50-some million to 46, 7 million, whatever it was for the Democrats. So the American people, I think, understand they want us in office too. They want us to check the Joe Biden craziness. The Democrats running all of the federal government have given us, record crime, record inflation. We went from a secure border to no border, and these record energy prices. So, not to mention what they've done to our rights, the attack we have seen on our liberty. So I do think Americans understand that as well, and that's something we're going to have to focus on as we go forward in the policy area, but certainly on the campaign side, like I said, we're going to have to adapt to the rules that are in play.
Congressman, there's another big event happening tomorrow in addition to the House leadership elections, that being the press conference by former President Donald Trump, in which he is expected in all likelihood to announce a run for the 2024 presidential race. This just days after he ridiculed Governor DeSantis, the big victor on the Republican side in these midterm elections, calling him desanctimonious and then doubling down on that criticism with a lengthy, almost paranoid rant against Governor DeSantis. Is it time for Donald Trump to step down?
No, I mean, I think President Trump was one of the best presidents we've ever had, certainly the best president we've had in my lifetime, did more what he said than any president I can remember, and did it with everyone in this town against him. He got more things done with every Democrat in this town against him, everyone in the mainstream press, a bunch of Republicans against him, and all the bureaucracy. So I support President Trump, and I hope he runs again. I also think Governor DeSantis has been a tremendous governor and has done a great job in Florida, and that's why you saw him win with the wide margin that he won by. And I always point out that there were 9 of us that formed the Freedom Caucus 7 years ago, and Governor DeSantis was one of the original 9. So he's done an outstanding job in Florida. But I support President Trump.
You briefly mentioned investigations in the House Judiciary Committee. In all likelihood, you're going to be chairman of that committee. It's probably, arguably, the most influential committee in the House of Representatives. You're going to be chairman. You talked about investigations. Let's go down the list of potential people who are going to be subpoenaed before your committee.
Well, the first focus is the Justice Department, Doug, because, again, we've had now 14 whistleblowers. We issued this report a couple weeks ago, where a 1,000-page report where, based on what the whistleblowers have come and told us about how political that place has become. That is not supposed to happen. We live in the greatest country ever, but America is not America if you have a Justice Department that does not treat people equally under the law, and that is exactly the situation we find ourselves in now. So we're gonna dig into that area first and foremost, and then, of course, it's also what's happening on our border. The intentional surrender of our border, no longer having a border. Mayorkas is just messed everything up, and it's being done in a premeditated fashion. So those are 2, I think, at the top of the list. Then there's some other things that need to be looked at. Largely, this whole Dr. Fauci and all the information he gave us that was not accurate during the pandemic. I think that's something we'll look at, too. Now, that won't be headquartered in the Judiciary Committee. That'll be in the Oversight Committee, I believe, as well as the whole examination of the Hunter Biden issue. But those are, I think, just 4 at the top of the list that the American people deserve the facts and the truth about.
Mm-hmm. Will you go so far as to potentially impeach any of these figures? For instance, Secretary Mayorkas, perhaps the Attorney General himself, Merrick Garland, perhaps the President of the United States himself, Joe Biden?
Well, that's a decision for the entire conference. I will say this. I think Secretary Mayorkas certainly deserves it, but that's a decision that we'll make on the Judiciary Committee for those individuals who are in our jurisdiction and in consultation with the broader Republican conference. That's how you have to do this stuff. Our key focus is getting the facts and the truth there. Here's one other prime example. 2 years ago, in October of 2020, 51 former intel officials signed a letter saying the Hunter Biden story had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Baloney. It was true. I want to know what those 51 people based that on when they sent that, because that letter became the basis for big tech and social media platforms to suppress that story, which we know had an impact on the 2020 presidential race. Maybe we don't get all these terrible things that have happened to our country the last 2 years if not for those 51 former intel officials who signed that letter. So I want to know what were they talking with the FBI and people in our government as the basis for that letter? So that is something we got to get to the bottom of. I think the country deserves an answer to that fundamental question.